Some pains don't make noise. They don't show up in tests, don't leave visible bruises, but they weigh. They weigh so much that sometimes we can barely breathe. It's the fear that visits us at midnight, the anxiety that speeds up our hearts for no apparent reason, the knot in our throats we can't explain to anyone. We live smiling on the outside, but so often, we are in ruins on the inside. And maybe today you woke up feeling this way, trying to be strong but silently pleading for relief. If this is you, this prayer is for you. God sees what no one else sees. He knows what's happening inside your chest when everything around seems to be under control. And more than seeing, He cares. Today, let's not hide the fear or pretend that everything is fine. Let's take it to the one who can heal the soul. Because our God does not despise anguished hearts, He embraces them. And it is precisely at the point of your greatest fragility that He wants to begin the miracle. Fear is more than an emotion, it can become a prison. And anxiety, when ignored, grows silently until it takes over everything. Bit by bit, it undermines faith, weakens trust, distorts vision. We start to see giants where God sees doors, obstacles where there are only processes. Therefore, dealing with fear is not optional. It's a matter of spiritual survival. God never intended for you to learn to live with anxiety as if accepting a sentence. He doesn't want you to normalize fear as part of your identity. A soul that lives crouched, constantly agitated, is not living, it's just resisting not to sink. And this needs to change. Not by your own effort, but through divine intervention. Today, the Lord wants to touch that point. He doesn't want you to merely withstand fear, He wants to heal its root. And this healing starts by acknowledging, yes, I have felt fear. Yes, I have struggled with anxiety. Because God doesn't heal what we pretend not to feel. He transforms what we surrender with honesty. Many times, we hear phrases like, don't be afraid, trust more, you lack faith. But God doesn't treat us like that. He doesn't belittle our internal struggles or demand from us feelings that already cause us suffering. The Lord knows the structure of our hearts. He understands that there are fears born from trauma, loss, sleepless nights, stories too difficult to tell out loud. And still, He chooses to draw near. In Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10, God doesn't just say, do not fear. He says, for I am with you. In other words, He doesn't shine a light on our fear to shame us. He enters the shadow with us to dissipate it. He faces fear alongside us, not as a distant master, but as a present Father. He holds our trembling hand. He calms the storm inside our chest. Today, don't feel guilty for being afraid. It doesn't make you less faithful or less loved. What makes a difference is where you take that fear. If you decide to lay everything in the Father's hands, He will not only listen to you, He will sustain you. There are days when everything seems to slip through our fingers. Emotions fluctuate, thoughts collide, and even prayers seem too weak for the weight we carry. It is on such days that Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10 becomes more than a citation, it becomes an anchor. A living word that secures our faith amidst instability. Do not fear, for I am with you. This promise is like a rock amidst a raging sea. It does not deny the chaos around us, but assures us that there is someone holding firm on the inside. It's not a suggestion, but a celestial affirmation. God is with us. And where He is, fear loses its power. Where He is, anxiety does not have the final word. This verse is one of the most intimate declarations of God to our hearts. He doesn't promise just help. He promises companionship. He says, you will face difficult things, yes. But you will face them with me. And that changes everything. Because when we know who is by our side, The size of the problem doesn't matter. The greatness of His presence does. When God says, "Do not fear," He is not demanding emotional perfection. He is extending an invitation. Resist. Resist the panic that tries to dominate you, the racing thoughts that pull you away from peace, the voice that says you won't endure. "Do not fear" is more than a pretty phrase. It's a loving command from a Father who knows how much fear limits us. And even so, He believes we can face it with Him. This invitation requires a daily choice. Fear will continue to try to knock at the door. Anxiety will sometimes disguise itself as prudence, as logic. But deep down, we know, it's the enemy trying to undermine our faith, weaken our steps. And it's at this moment that God's "do not fear" should echo louder. He is saying, you can feel the fear, but you don't have to be governed by it. Today, accept this invitation. Not as one who ignores reality, but as one who chooses a higher place for the heart to dwell. Say in faith, even with a trembling voice, "Lord, I don't want to live a hostage to fear. I accept your peace. I accept your companionship." Because God's "do not fear" is always accompanied by "I am with you." And that is enough. Often, anxiety stems from the feeling of being alone, from carrying everything on our backs, from not having anyone to share the weight of our souls. The world may be full of people, but inside, the heart feels abandoned. This is why this promise from Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10 holds so much power, "For I am with you." God does not watch from a distance. He doesn't send help through others. He Himself comes. And when He comes, He stays. God's presence is not symbolic. It is real, concrete, alive. He doesn't accompany us as a spectator. He walks alongside us, step by step. In good days and bad. In laughter and tears. In celebration and exhaustion. He is there, even when the heart doesn't feel it, even when the silence seems too great. This companionship changes everything. Because when we know that the Almighty is with us, loneliness dissipates, fear diminishes, anxiety loses its strength. You may not see solutions today, but you can trust, you are not alone. And those who walk with God, even in the shadows, walk in safety. Because peace does not come from the absence of problems. It comes from the presence of the One who never abandons us. Fear has a subtle but devastating effect. It isolates us. It distances us from people, from hope, from God's promises. It builds invisible walls around the mind, saying, "No one will understand, don't talk about it, face it alone." And when we believe these lies, we become prisoners of silence. Anxiety grows in the shadows, fed by loneliness. But God does the opposite of fear. He draws near. While fear tries to close doors, God insists on entering. While fear makes us look inward, as if we are sinking, God extends His hand and says, "I am here. Walk with me." He does not impose healing. He invites us to walk towards it. Not in haste, not in guilt, but with grace. Today, if fear has made you withdraw from people, from faith, from yourself, listen to the voice of the shepherd. He will not accuse you or force you. He wants to walk with you, at your pace, in your time, but with direction. Because the heart that walks with God is never truly alone. And the fear that isolates loses its strength when we reconnect with the presence that heals. Anxiety often arises from our attempt to live what has not yet arrived. It is the heart racing toward tomorrow, trying to control what does not yet exist. We think too much, anticipate pain, create scenarios, and in doing so, we lose the now. The mind speeds up, the body tenses, the soul tires. And little by little, we stop living, we start surviving. But God does not dwell in the imagined future. He is in the present. It is here, in this very moment, that He wants to meet you. He does not demand that you have answers for tomorrow. He only asks that you bring today before Him. Anxiety pushes us toward a time we cannot touch. God, on the other hand, anchors us in the now. He says, I am with you. Now. Today, take a moment. Breathe. Look around. Perhaps not everything is as you wanted, but you are alive, you are here, and so is God. And if He is in your present, your future is already in good hands. Peace begins when we hand tomorrow back what belongs to it and choose to trust the one who walks with us today. One of the greatest traps of fear and anxiety is forced silence. The feeling that we cannot talk about what we feel, like admitting pain, is synonymous with weakness. But the truth is exactly the opposite. Healing begins when we have the courage to name what hurts us. When we say, yes, I am afraid. Yes, I have been struggling with anxiety. In that moment, we take the power away from the shadows. God does not heal what we hide. He transforms what we surrender with sincerity. He is not scandalized by our feelings. On the contrary, He understands them better than we do. He knows the causes behind our anguish, the roots of a restlessness that often we cannot even explain. Today, do not pressure yourself to be strong all the time. Don't pretend to be okay when everything inside you screams for help. Go to God with your simple words, your deepest fears, your most jumbled thoughts, and sincerely say, Lord, it's hard. I need you. Because that is the exact point where He begins to act. At the place where our truth meets His mercy. Anxiety doesn't always stem from facts. Often, it arises from possibilities. From thoughts that multiply, from assumptions that grow and turn into monsters in our minds. The Bible knows this. That's why in Isaiah 41 verse 10, God doesn't just say, fear not, He also says, do not be dismayed. In other words, don't let your imagination imprison you. How many times have we been frightened by what hasn't even happened yet? How many sleepless nights lost to scenarios created by a troubled heart? But God, with His firm yet gentle voice, calls us back to the reality of faith. He says, do not be afraid. I am in control. He knows that our minds are a battlefield, and that's why He offers more than comfort. He offers renewal. Today, if your thoughts are racing, if fear is creating images in your mind that paralyze you, talk to God about it. Ask Him to calm your imagination, to bring order where there is confusion. Because faith is not an illusion, it is a clear vision of the truth. And when God occupies our minds, no lie has the strength to dominate. In the midst of chaos, when everything seems uncertain, when even the ground feels slippery, God gives us a declaration that steadies our feet and calms our souls. For I am your God. He doesn't just say He is present. He reaffirms who He is. Your God. Your sustenance. Your shelter. Your defender. And this identity of His transforms the way we see our own. Fear and anxiety often grow when we forget who we are connected to. We forget that we belong to someone greater than our challenges. We have a God who does not change with the seasons, does not distance Himself when we fail, and does not abandon us when we are weakest. When He says, I am your God, He is saying, you are not at the mercy of chance. You have a master. You are cared for. You have a Father. And this changes everything. Because when we remember who our God is, our insecurity diminishes, our faith rises, and peace begins to fill the space previously occupied by fear. Today, say out loud, you are my God. No matter how you're feeling. This declaration, repeated with faith, will remind you that you are not just anyone living by chance. You are a child of the God who never fails. Fear has a subtle yet persistent voice. It says, you won't make it, everything will go wrong, you are alone, there's no way out. These phrases, when repeated long enough, become invisible chains, locking up decisions, relationships, dreams. But we need to remember something essential. Fear lies. It exaggerates, distorts, paralyzes. It paints a picture of defeat even when God has already decreed victory. That's why the Word of God is so necessary, because it reveals the truth, and the truth sets us free. When we hear God say, "I am with you, I will strengthen you, I will help you," these words come in like light into a dark room. They dismantle the constructs of fear, replacing doubt with conviction, anxiety with confidence. Today, choose which voice you will feed. The voice of fear, which isolates and suffocates, or the voice of God, which heals and guides. Perhaps fear is speaking loudly within you, but the truth of God holds more weight. It is alive, faithful, and constant. And if you stand firm in it, you will discover that even in the worst storms, it is still possible to walk with peace in your heart. Because fear lies, but God never does. There are days when we simply cannot go on. The mind is exhausted, the body overloaded, and the spirit in silence. In those moments, all we want is rest, but not just physical rest, a rest that rebuilds us from within. This is where God speaks, with firmness and tenderness, "I will strengthen you." He does not require you to be strong to come to Him. He promises to be your strength when you have none left. This promise is not generic. It is personal. It is God saying, "I know what you carry. I see what no one else sees. And it is precisely where your strength ends that my strength begins to act." He will not leave you on the ground. He will not judge you for being tired. He will lift you up. And the strength He gives is not just endurance, it is renewal. It is like a new breath in the midst of a race, a breath that reignites the flame that was about to go out. Today, do not try to bear everything alone. It is not a sign of faith to endure until you break. It is a sign of wisdom to say, "Lord, I cannot, but I know you can." And it is in that moment that He fulfills, "I will strengthen you." Sometimes, all we need is help. But not just generic advice or empty words. We need someone who enters into the pain, who understands the chaos, who is willing to engage with what no one else wants to touch. And that is exactly what God promises when He says, "I will help you." He does not watch from afar. He acts up close. This divine help does not only come when we cry out loudly. It also arrives in the whispers of the soul, in soundless tears, in thoughts that only He hears. God knows every detail, and it is in those details that He operates with the most tenderness. He sees the emotional fatigue that no one notices, the mental overload that you disguise with smiles, the fear you swallow in silence. And He does not ignore it. He enters in. Today, remember, you have a God who helps, who comes down to your level of pain to lift you up with dignity, who does not tire of starting over with you, who rescues you, sustains you, guides you. And if everything seems too big to bear, do not hesitate. Say in faith, "Lord, help me." Because whoever prays like this, with truth, never goes unanswered. When everything seems about to crumble, what we need is not just comfort, it is support. Something or someone to keep us standing when our strength fails, when our feet falter, when our faith seems small. And that is exactly what God promises. "I will sustain you with the right hand of my righteousness." Not just any hand. It is His hand. Firm, strong, just a hand that does not let go, does not tremble, does not fail. This promise reminds us that our balance does not depend on our emotional stability, but on God's faithfulness. He sustains when the soul sinks, when the heart weakens, when the mind confuses. and He sustains not based on our merit, but on His justice. In other words, He will not let you go just because you fell. He will lift you up because He promised. Today, if you feel like you're about to fall, inside or out, remember this image. An invisible yet real hand is holding you. No matter how deep your pain or how big your crisis, God is already underneath you, preventing you from breaking. And He will sustain you until you can walk again. More firmly, more confidently, more freely. Even after praying, even after reading the Word, fear sometimes returns. It knocks at the door of the heart when everything seems calm, invades thoughts in the middle of the night, hides in the details of the day. And when this happens, many wonder, where did I go wrong? Why do I still feel this way? The answer is not guilt, it is persistence. The cure for fear is a process, not an event. So what to do when fear insists? Return to His presence. Return to prayer, even if the words are few. Return to the Word, even if your heart is restless. Return to silence with God, even when everything around is noisy. Because resisting fear is not about ignoring it, but about choosing, every time, to trust God once more. Create spaces in your day to reconnect with refuge. It could be a minute of silence with your eyes closed, a song that reminds you of who God is, or a verse whispered in faith. Fear may be persistent, but God's love is even more constant. And if every time it comes, you run to God, you will realize, fear will tire out before you do. Because whoever dwells in His presence dwells in peace. Worry feeds on absence. The absence of control, the absence of answers, the absence of guarantees. It settles in when we feel we are alone in front of a problem too big to handle. But there is a way to silence that anxious voice. Trade worry for presence. Not the presence of an immediate solution, but the presence of God. The one that surrounds us even when nothing has changed outside. When your mind begins to agitate, when your heart races and your thoughts get tangled, take a pause. Breathe. And remember, God is here. You don't need to understand everything to find rest. You just need to remember who is by your side. The presence of God doesn't eliminate challenges, it repositions our souls. It makes the problems seem smaller and hope appear greater. It turns fear into a reminder that we need to draw even closer to the Father. Today, decide, I won't carry this weight alone. I will walk with God. And where He is, worry loses its place. Chaos may surround us, bad news, emotional pressures, responsibilities that seem greater than our strength. Sometimes, everything around us feels like it's collapsing, and we have the sensation that we're going to sink along with it. But the truth from heaven remains. Those who are supported by God may sway, but they don't sink. Because support doesn't come from the world's stability, it comes from the faithfulness of the Father. God doesn't promise an absence of storms. He promises His presence in the boat. And when He is holding us up, no wave is strong enough to knock us down. What would be a cause for despair for others becomes a testimony for those who trust in God. It becomes proof that there is a greater force at work, protecting and guiding us. Today, if everything seems unstable, if the ground has slipped from beneath your feet, remember, you are not in the hands of chance. You are in the hands of the One who governs the universe. And when God supports you, the impossible yields, chaos calms, and the soul finds peace even in the midst of war. You will not sink, you will make it through. Fear, when ignored, becomes a prison. But when surrendered to God, it can become a bridge. Yes, a bridge to a deeper encounter with the Father. Because every feeling of fear can be transformed into prayer. Instead of feeding panic with negative thoughts, we can redirect it with faith. Lord, I'm afraid, but I trust in you. This simple attitude changes everything. Because God doesn't expect perfect prayers, He wants sincere prayers. And few prayers are more honest than those made in the midst of fear. It's in those moments that we tear our hearts open, let down our masks, and become fully dependent on His presence. And it's in that place of surrender that peace begins to rise. Today, transform what troubles you into a plea. Talk to God about what keeps you awake at night, about the thoughts you still haven't managed to control. And even if everything still seems confusing, prayer will align your soul with His presence. And when that happens, fear may linger nearby, but it will no longer dominate you. Throughout every word of Isaiah 41 verse 10, God not only calms, He restores. He teaches us that true courage doesn't come from the absence of fear, but from the awareness of His presence. When we understand who walks with us, what once seemed impossible becomes bearable. What was a burden transforms into a process. What was darkness becomes a path. Communion with God doesn't remove opposing winds, it gives us wings to face them. It shapes our hearts to trust even when we don't understand, to hope even when everything says, it won't work. It's in communion that fear dissolves, anxiety quiets, and the soul finds rest. Today, as you conclude this prayer, carry with you this certainty: you are not alone. God's hand supports you, the Holy Spirit strengthens you, and the peace of Christ envelopes you. And if fear tries to return tomorrow, remember, God remains. He continues to say, "Do not fear, for I am with you." And that is enough.